I do not know the origin of the term history from the bottom up, or by what sequence of cause and effect we came to use it in the 1960s. I recently reread my master's essay on Dutchess County, published in 1962, and find that I said there, despite the admonitions of the revisionists, research is still spread too wide and thin, and the patient work of building from the bottom up has hardly begun. What I know for sure is that Jesse Lemisch burst onto the historical scene with much the same bravado as the protagonists of his famous essay about seamen in the period of the American Revolution. In 1967, Students for a Democratic Society published Jesse's occasional paper entitled Toward a Democratic History. At about the same time, he contributed an essay to a collection of papers edited by Stanford historian Martin Bernstein entitled Toward a New Class. Jesse's contribution was the American Revolution seen from the bottom up. It began with a fragment from a poem by Bertolt Brecht, which asks, what do we really know about the laborers who built the pyramids? In 1968, there appeared in the William and Mary Quarterly Jesse's essay entitled Jack Tar in the Streets, later selected as one of the 11 best articles published in that elite journal during the half-century beginning in 1943. It begins, "Here comes Jack Tar, his bowed legs bracing him as if the very Broadway beneath his feet might begin to pitch and roll." Then follows a 14-line footnote on contemporary terms referring to sailors, and a second paragraph that starts, "Clothes don't make the man, nor does language. Surely we can do better than these stereotypes. Few have tried." And I might add that in 1975, the Organization of American Historians held its annual meeting in Boston on April 19th, which of course is Patriots' Day, the anniversary of Lexington and Concord. Jesse's paper was entitled "Balin Besieged in His Bunker." That's Professor Bernard Balin of Harvard University. And Jesse began that paper as follows, "Boom, boom, boom." He said the whole room went this way, and that he was accused, these were the canon of the historians from the bottom up flushing out Professor Balin, and he said, no, this was just my recognition of Patriots' Day. Those were miraculous years, and these essays by Jesse Lemisch were among the miracles of the time. I met Howard Zinn late one night in December 1960. I was at the so-called smoker of the Columbia University History Department, otherwise known as the slave market, looking for a job. I had put out the word that I wanted to teach in what was then called a Negro college. About midnight, there came across the floor a lanky man, his hair jet black then, looking to add a fellow radical to the faculty of Spelman College in Atlanta. I arrived at Spelman having made an unconventional career choice, but with a head full of traditional ideas about what it means to be an historian. I asked Howard what papers he was preparing for which scholarly conferences. He looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. Along with the late Ella Baker, he was one of 2 adult advisors to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. He had other things on his mind than the professional conferences of historians. In my classes at Spelman, I used Botkin's collection of excerpts from the WPA slave narratives and a phonograph record on which W.E.B. Du Bois had recorded the story of his life. But I wasn't doing oral history myself. The Zinns and Lynds lived on the Spelman College campus, and one day I dropped by the Zinns' nearby apartment. Howard was sitting there with 2 young SNCC field secretaries and an old reel-to-reel tape recorder, preserving their memories of going to jail in Albany, Georgia. I experienced a moment of enlightenment. I thought, I could do this too. Howard Zinn's great achievement has been to insist on looking at the whole of history through the eyes of what Subcomandante Marcos calls the below. Consider the magnificent opening scene of a people's history. Arawak Indians swim out to look at the strange apparition at anchor in their harbor. They literally look up at it from below and are full of wonder. Columbus commented, according to Howard, they would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. Here and throughout, Howard sees things steadily from the bottom up and assigns priorities within his narrative from that standpoint. As Zinn remarks, Samuel Eliot Morison, in his biography of Columbus, devotes one sentence to what Morison accurately calls European genocide. Morison, Zinn says, mentions the truth quickly and goes on to other things more important to him. And indeed, this is that Samuel Eliot Morison whom I remember when I was a Harvard undergraduate lecturing in his yachting rights. It's too easily assumed that history from the bottom up has won the day and been generally accepted. The reality is that what has been accepted is only a truncated version of history from the bottom up that contents itself with the ethnography of the oppressed. As Thomas Humphrey writes, we have succeeded only in pressing the authors of the master narrative to alter their stories slightly, or to add another box for the poor on the side of the page. That is, the historical establishment is happy to give us the franchisement for chimney sweeps who get cancer, or textile workers who burn to death when the employer locks the door.